Hello and welcome to a very special live episode of TRIGGERnometry. I'm Francis Foster.
I'm Konstantin Kisin, and our guest today has been making the news for the last couple of days. Laurence Fox, welcome to TRIGGERnometry.
Hi guys, nice to see you again.
It's good to see you, mate. We'll talk about the comments that you made, the apology. We'll give our take on it and all of that. We'll talk about the bigger picture issues as well. But the one thing, first of all, I appreciate is that as we move from being a YouTube channel to more of a media organization and covering different issues, I'm actually really pleased that you felt comfortable to come here and talk to us when a lot of other mainstream publications wanted to do an interview, but not on the terms that are actually reasonable, etc. So thank you for being here. And in that spirit, the first thing I actually think we should do...
Just before, we should also mention that the people watching at home can send questions to Laurence on YouTube Super Chats and PayPals.
And we will answer, we'll do an interview, then we'll have a quick break, and then we'll answer your questions. But Laurence, what I wanted to say is, I think quite often, whenever anything like this happens, there is not enough context to whatever it is that's happened. It doesn't mean that it excuses certain comments, and we'll get into all of that. But the first thing I wanted to do is actually explain what happened. So this has been a series of dominoes. The first of which was our friend Jeff Norco, a brilliant comedian. He went on a show called Politics Live. And there was a conversation with Ava Evans and a couple of other people about male suicide. We're going to play that clip for you now so that you know what's going on.
A new role would champion issues such as reducing male suicide. Would that be something you'd be in favour of?
Well, what's interesting about that is the hostility it sometimes faces whenever it comes up. I saw a programme where there was like a feminist academic and a Lib Dem MP, and they were so hostile to this idea. And I thought, if you flipped those things, i.e. that it's the biggest cause of death for men under 50 is suicide, men are less likely to go to the doctors, men are less likely to maintain friendships. If that was for women, we'd often look at, well, why is society making that happen? Whereas with men, the argument is often, why are they doing that to themselves? So I'm not totally wedded to the idea, but the hostility towards the idea, I find it instructive.
Ava?
I think that it feeds into the culture a little bit, this Minister for Men argument. In my mind, I think there should be a Minister for Mental Health, which would be all-encompassing. I mean, you've got something like 7 million children waiting for prescriptions for mental health at the moment. It's a crisis that's endemic throughout the country, not specific to men. And I think, a lot of ministers kind of bandy this about to sort of, I'm sorry, but make an enemy out of women. I think, not you, and I don't think your book is. I don't
accept that. I don't think it is to make an enemy. If we looked at during COVID, men were literally more likely to die from COVID. And I don't really want to cast myself as a meninist or one of these guys from the manosphere, because that's not who I am. But I do find it interesting that sometimes the arguments tend to throw it back.
But who was doing all the work during COVID? A lot of the time, if you looked into people's households, it was the women who were taking on the laundry, the school care, all of that.
I'm not disputing any of that. What I'm saying that there are specific issues that men face that might warrant specific attention. I mean, literally, the biggest killer of men under 50 is suicide. That is an arresting statistic, and if that doesn't warrant specific attention, mental health is an umbrella issue.
I have to say that is also because women are unsuccessful. That is a lot of feeds into that statistic.
But it feels like, it just doesn't feel like you've got any space for this idea that men might have unique challenges that face them. And the problem is, even as I'm saying this, in my mind, it's like I've got out the violin, and I don't want to be.
Read the book.
I don't want to be this guy, because that's part of the problem. Is because you're encouraged at one level, is men need to talk about their problems more, and then the moment you do it, you're like, all right, but not quite so often and not quite so loud. So like you say, the book is more light-hearted than that, but it certainly goes around.
Okay, so that was Jeff Norcott on BBC Politics Live, and that then sparked what happened afterwards, which was you going on Dan Wootton's show, and here is this clip, which is what you said.
We're past the watershed, so I can say this. Show me a single self-respecting man that would like to climb into bed with that woman, ever, who wasn't an incel, who wasn't a cucked little incel. That little woman has been fed, spoon-fed oppression day after day after day after day, starting with the lie of the gender wage gap. And she sat there, and I'm going like, if I met you in a bar and that was like sentence 3, chances of me just walking away are just huge. We need powerful, strong, amazing women who make great points for themselves. We don't need these sort of feminist 4.0. They're pathetic and embarrassing. Who'd want to shag that?
Oh, Laurence. Well, look,
Sorry.
I'm just going to provide a touch of balance from her, because she did actually respond to this earlier today, saying that she regretted her comments, but she didn't apologise. Yes, so there you go. And she's a very beautiful woman, Laurence. Very beautiful woman. There you go. Although I'm probably not.
Okay, Laurence. So looking at that clip in the cold, brutal light of day, it doesn't look good, mate, does it?
No. I think I'd spoken to them earlier in the day, and because you have a pre-interview, if you know what I mean, and they'd said, we're going to do this story, and I was slightly hoping that they weren't going to do that story because I had strong feelings about it. Certainly what I felt was the belittling of male mental health and all of that sort of stuff, and that's the context that Konstantin has already added, and I thought there's probably a chance that I will go over the top here because I'm emotional, and I spent 22 years acting. So when you're an actor, you're trained on instinct. You're trained to feel instinct and jump on it because that's how you keep stories going and people suspend their disbelief. So that is my it's the way my brain works, and also I'm highly emotional as a person. So when I listen back to it now, I just go, it's just kind of crass. It's the kind of thing you'd say in a pub. People do say in pubs, you hear it all the time, stuff like that. But the point is, I should have really just attacked. I think I was fair enough to make the point that I wanted to make, which was when you've got a misandrist fourth wave feminist who wants men to be terrified and scared of women, and who tweets pictures of her saying I'm socially distancing from men, and I'm wearing a mask to protect myself from the most deadly virus of all men. I'm just a bit like, stop. And therefore, instead of dismantling her ideas, I just said, I can't think of a single man who'd want to shag you. I mean, which self-respecting man would want to shag you? I was also trying to be funny. Big mistake. And I listen back to it and I think, yeah, it's crass and crap, and but I don't really, if I'm truly honest, think it's merited the, wall to wall, channel to channel, politician, everyone, media, everyone, condemnation, especially when you see half the stuff that has said, which is infinitely worse and has passed without problem.
Well, look, I agree with you on that aspect of it. I do think that the entire thing has been blown out of all proportion, and we'll get onto that later in the interview. But I would say, to your point about being an actor, and I understand if you're an actor, you're an emotional person, because that is the nature of the profession. I've done some acting training myself. However, Laurence, you're now a political figure. Isn't it the role of a political figure to be measured, to be reasonable, to be analytical? It's not to go in with emotion.
No, I think we need more emotion in politics, actually. I think we could do with a lot more emotion in politics rather than people just nodding along to whatever they say. I think I would never want to, I perhaps need to harness my emotion, but I think emotion and instinct are two of the most powerful tricks and tools that one has in the armory. But yeah, 100%, you're right. Who is Ava Evans? With all due respect to her, I'd never heard of her until 2 days ago. I don't know what she is or what she does for a living. I still don't know what she does for a living. And I probably should have not gone down to her level, and as I've said, I've apologised for the way I spoke, because it's not helpful, and it doesn't get across the point, which is the sentiment behind what I spoke, which is women like that, women who have that ideological position of hyper-feminism, which is sort of authoritarian rather than egalitarian feminism, and misandry. My point was, what man who wants to build a life and build a great union and a family, of which this country needs a lot, because our birth rates are so low, would want, if he was to marry a woman like that, I'd imagine he'd be giving himself a life sentence of, hell.
Laurence, when I saw that clip, there was part of me that thought, did you have a few drinks before that? And then you and then you just went, right, screw this, I'm going to tell them what I think.
I'd had a glass of wine at dinner, yeah, definitely, but I've had a few. But you know, it's nine. It's not so much that. It's like 9:30 at night. You're like you're at the end of the day. You're much more kind of I've finished all my things. I can relax, which is what you can't do because it's television. You shouldn't relax. But you know, I am reminded back of those sort of shows like The Word and all of that stuff. Do you remember? And we were raised on that. And also, I spend a lot of time listening to. I think one of the other things that affects the way I speak sometimes is I spend a lot of time listening to American podcasts. So I'll listen to like Megyn Kelly a lot.
Yeah.
And she's sort of chatting away and she's going, I'm saying, fuck them, that's why I don't care, fuck them, you know. And I sort of, you become influenced and you forget that British broadcasting is about going, yes, yes, on the 9 o'clock news, we're going to talk about this and that. But, so yeah, I'm not making excuses for myself. It was crass, poorly expressed, demeaned her, which is wrong. What's the point of doing that? And it removed, I didn't get my point across, which is what I was there to do, which was to get a point across.
There is a possibility that people will only be hearing me through France's microphone at the moment. Some people will, critics will say we're doing a very good impression of GB News in the early days, which is a fair comment, we'll take it. Taking the piss out of us. Look, I think the reason I wanted to have you on, actually, is that when I saw your comments, I just thought, Laurence, this is a silly thing to say. It's offensive. It's, crass. And I didn't comment on it in a couple of days because I thought what should have happened, which is GB News has an editorial code. You've clearly broken it. You're probably going to get sacked. That is what should happen, right, in this situation. And that's it. But I think what we've also seen is the reaction. It's just been insane. From my perspective, and that isn't to I think your point is interesting about podcasts in particular because GB News is Ofcom regulated. It's a British public broadcaster, right? And that isn't the same as sitting here with us.
Yeah,
it's different. And do you think that maybe you weren't? Is it that you sort of forgot about it, or is it that you actually chafe against the restrictions that GB News is operating under?
I've had a lot of Ofcom training by GB News, and I've never, up until Monday, had a complaint that's been made and upheld against me. That as Angelos, who's walking around throwing everyone under the bus this morning, has said, I sail close to the wind. I know what
who's Angelos?
Frangopoulos, the guy who runs it.
The chief executive of GB.
Yeah.
And my thing is, because of the way that I am, I'm recklessly free in my expression in a lot of ways. So when someone says Ofcom, I just think, oh, there's a bunch of communists who want to shut everyone up and silence people, and I don't really think about them. So I just think, if you're telling the truth, if it's an opinion you're being asked for, then offer it. And obviously there are ones, I offer an opinion every single week. And about various things, and occasionally people shout in my ear and go, "You've got to have more balance, push back," and I'm like, "That's good. You do want balance, and you do want to push back," but at the same time, I think you get confused between the areas, from the pub chat to the podcast to the Ofcom regulated space. But it's not an excuse. I'm hired by them. I've got for about the next 20 minutes probably. I've got it is my responsibility to do it. But I also think at the same time, GB News itself calls itself the home of free speech, so they possibly might.
But they do have an editorial charter,
of course
which you
they
agreed.
do.
And the editorial charter says you must respect people's opinions and people, right?
Yeah.
And we'd all agreed that what you said about Ava was disrespectful.
Yeah. I don't think it's misogyny or anything like that. I think it's disrespectful. I think it was.
I think the fact, what I'll tell you, just as someone who works with words quite a lot, if you'd said shag her, it would have been offensive, but I think shag that really took it to a different level.
Yeah, well, I wasn't referring to her, I wasn't itemizing her as that. What I was saying was, this is the sort of person, if you met someone in a bar like that, and actually I wasn't talking about her at that point, I was saying, if you met someone in a bar and the third sentence in, they started telling you how much they hated men, who'd want to shag that person? So you could say her, or you could say, if I just added the word person.
Yeah.
But what it came across as, which I completely understand, and it's, again, I'm holding my hands up, is it when who'd want to shag that like it's some object? So I can see that.
Yeah, I think that's how a lot of people receive
Yeah,
that.
of course they do. But, anyone who is looking for, and when I look at it, it sounds like that too, but it wasn't my intention.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to make this the grilling of Laurence Fox.
You can make it whatever you want.
I don't want to, because I think, as I said, I think what you said was crass and wrong, and I also think the reaction to it has been just insane to me.
It's like a trap.
And we'll talk a little bit about why that is in a moment, but there was some debate internally here about whether we should have you or not. And for us, and for me and Francis, it was obvious that we should, because I think it's important to have these discussions. But you're a Christian, and we have some Christians who work here who were like, how does this reconcile with Laurence's faith exactly?
Yeah.
I haven't read the Bible cover to cover. But you know what I mean? I don't know, talking about whether you shag someone is in there.
No, it's definitely not in there. Along with he who's without sin cast the first stone, and the fact that we're all fallen. So we are, we're all sinful, we're all fallen. Jesus Christ died for our sins. We can't be perfect all the time. We're not perfect. So we are by our very definition fallen. So that's just an example of someone being fallen in my book. It doesn't reconcile itself with my faith, because it's, we're all created equal in the eyes of God. And actually, speak to any women I know, they're upheld and loved and supported and honoured as they should be. My problem is emotion. It's like, do not belittle male suicide, because I have friends who have died from male suicide, and you don't see it coming. And I'm still angry about it. Don't do that. Don't go, it's a cultural issue, or shush. You never see it in men, because they just go, and then they, I'm lucky I'm an emotional person. And that is a story. And to belittle that is shameful and disgusting, actually. And, I could make an argument now that I'm riled up again to say people like that are vile, disgusting people. But I can't do that. But I can make an argument to do it, because I don't want to be in that world. I'd much rather be in the forgiveness and contrition world, and because that's where we're going to have to head. But to do that, I've had to deal with families that have had this take place, and no one knew it was coming. So you do need to talk about men's mental health, and you don't need to poo-poo it and talk about the gender pay gap when someone's trying to make a serious point. So that, I'm still enraged about that.
And I don't blame you, by the way. I think in the interest of, I'm so glad you explained that part of it, because it doesn't justify your comments. But I think what happened in that BBC Politics Live thing, we didn't play the full clip. By the end of it, there was another woman who jumped in. And by the end of it, Jeff was apologizing for sexual assault against women, when the entire conversation was supposed to be about male suicide. And the demonization of men in the media, in advertising, in Hollywood, it is happening, and we all see it. You have to be blind not to. And I think it's bad for men and for women. Actually.
Feminization of men, that's what it is. This is my objection to the fourth wave of feminism, if that's where we are, is essentially, of course we want equality. Of course we want equality. And of course we don't want men going, I'm going to, you don't want the behaviours that have taken place in the past. You want women to have just as active a role in life as men do. But this wave it's vengeful of us. And actually, the amount of men in this world who do wonderful and amazing things and sacrifice hugely for women, we just throw them under the bus and put them all in with the same thing? And, it is, as Jeff is a much, much more measured person than me. And even he was starting to get, what I'm feeling edgy and tense about this, because the media narrative is bollocks to men. It's all about women and diversity and equity and inclusion. And it's like, well, do we get included? Do our problems get included? This kills more people than anyone under 50. I've had people that I've known who've come back from the Gulf War and have killed themselves, So not only have they gone, along with 99% of the other men, to whether you agree with the fighting or not, they've gone to represent Britain's interests overseas and had people die in tanks that have fallen off, marsh banks and sunk, and listen to the last words of their friends crying to the point where, as they're dying and comforting each other, then to go home and to take their own lives. I mean, it's despicable.
You know that phrase, sorry Francis, just one more question from me and then you take over. You know the phrase, the medium is the message?
Yeah.
I wonder whether you know, that you mentioned you were trying to be funny, you were trying to be provocative. It's late at night. You've got a short amount of time to make some kind of impact. I don't think anybody's ever heard the argument that you've just made by you as eloquently as you've just put it. And I think, is it possible that that medium where you've got a 3-minute thing, it just doesn't allow the depth and the nuance that having an hour like this, sitting down with people who disagree with what you said, but still, you know, are interested in the broader conversation.
Yeah.
That seems to me to be just a completely different way of having this discussion.
I never wanted to do that 9:30 slot with Dan because it's exactly clickbait. It's just clickbait. They just, you know, they give you the most provocative story and they want Laurence to come in and say something provocative, of which on this occasion, I went over the line quite substantially. But that's what they kind of want. They want you to sail through, and it's unhealthy. I don't think it's good for television. In fact, I think hour-long television with 4 breaks and 5 different stories is crap, actually. And as we've seen with the massive rise in podcasting and the success of podcasting, you don't need it. So GB News I admire what their original mission was to do, and I watch in horror. I feel dreadful because a trap was set and the bait was me, and GB News ate the bait, and that's what happened. But the trap's been waiting there forever. The trap has been waiting, and all GB News had to do was cancel one of their own, and then GB News are no longer the home of free speech. Do you know what I mean?
Let's explore that, because what do you mean by that, Laurence?
They want if you look at the reaction to what's happened, every single media channel from both sides of what I call the Union Party, but Labour and Conservative, and every single politician and media outlet is saying the same thing: shut them down.
Well, let's play a clip of that. We've got a clip actually of Adam Bolton on Newsnight. He was there along with several others, including a Conservative MP, and this is what took place.
I watched it until it was drawn attention to, but I wasn't surprised. Nonetheless, I did ask myself why these two people were on a purportedly serious news station at all, bearing in mind that Mr. Wotton in other areas is currently suspended from the Mail. He's under investigation at the Sun as well for his previous behaviour.
Over allegations that he denies, I should say.
And as far as Laurence Fox is concerned, I think he now has a long record of saying pretty extreme things. And in fact, I was at a news meeting at another broadcaster today and was saying, well, you know, would you still put Laurence Fox on television? And the conclusion was you probably wouldn't. And both of them, I think, have damaged themselves by doing this. And therefore we say, well, why was GB News doing it? And, you know, I have to say, I think the complaints have piled up against GB News. I think there is a delicate and important broadcast ecology in this country. I think, you know, GB News is trying to bust that ecology, and frankly, what Ofcom should do is shut it down, like it shut down RT.
Do you agree?
I mean...
Shut down RT. I mean, RT is the propaganda wing of the Russian government. Anyway.
Yeah, so that's worrying, because people will find what you said distasteful, they may argue that it's sexist, fair enough. But what, you're going to shut down an entire TV channel because of words that are distasteful? I mean, that is an overreaction, to put it mildly.
Well, I think the hint is in the two things that I hear there are broadcast ecology. Now, what is a broadcast ecology? For me, in my overwhelming belief that there's the idea that we live in a democratic country is not true anymore. We're living in a very soft communist state in the UK at the moment. So the broadcast ecology is parrot whatever the regime want you to parrot, be it over COVID, be it over GB News, be it over anything, be it over trans issues, be it anything or cultural issues, you know, BLM, all of these things. There is a broadcast ecology that they fit in, and that's the narrative, mostly peaceful riots, etc., etc., etc. So GB News' attempt to disrupt that broadcast ecology was a very healthy idea, and it was its USP. But the second thing he said, and it just sort of comes out, like she said, I don't think Laurence Fox should just be allowed on TV. And it's like, do you realise what you're saying? You're saying, I think that this person should be banned from our broadcast ecology that we've created for you. And I think GB News would I know Ofcom is a nightmare, but I've been into that office, which is about the most toxic place you can ever spend time in my view. I find the whole building, just because it's full of snakes who want to close the whole thing down from within anay.
We're talking about GB News.
About GB News.
Yeah.
And you go into the office and it's just like, oh, you need a shower when you leave. And I'm only in there 5-6 hours a week. And I've said to them, every time I walk in, I've said, you need to start pushing back against this, because Ofcom are going to kill you, whether you like it or not. So, and they're currently working on a different model as well, similar to, I think getting off. I imagine they will be booted off probably. But they had an opportunity yesterday or the day before to turn around and just go, look, I thought what Laurence said was reprehensible and appalling and went far beyond what GB News did. But fundamentally, we believe in the right to free speech. So we utterly condemn what he said, but we utterly defend his right to say it. I mean, it's the free speech version of Martin Luther King saying, content of character, not colour of skin.
Hold on, Laurence, hold on. When you became a presenter on GB News, you agreed to their editorial charter.
Yeah, that's true.
Which you broke, right?
Well, I don't know if I've broken it.
You definitely did. I mean, I've read it. It says you must respect the opinions of others and those people. And we've already agreed, not to go over all ground, but we've already agreed your comments were disrespectful to Ava. So you did break it, which is, look, people are going to break rules and that happens.
Yeah.
So I have to say, from where, as an outside observer, I think your criticism of GB News is unreasonable in this situation. They have to. They have to suspend you.
No, I'm not saying don't suspend me.
And probably sack you.
Yeah, I'm not.
And therefore, how can they defend your right to say it if they're suspending you for it? How can they do that? From their perspective, they're going, we're regulated by Ofcom. Laurence has broken our rules. He's broken Ofcom rules.
Yeah.
So I think the issue you're fighting against here is that GB News is an Ofcom regulated broadcaster and not a YouTube channel, let's say, right? So
but they also, but just to, again, in terms of context,
well, let's hash this out.
In terms of context, I told them exactly what I was going to say, including the word shag. I said, who would want to shag that? And they were giggling away. And they were giggling away right up until the moment the mob came for them. So yes, I've gone past their editorial thing. Also, by the way, I'm totally happy to get sacked.
No, I know, but I'm saying your criticism is unfair, it seems to me.
Well, I think GB News are, what is the point in labelling yourself the home of free speech if you're going to cancel people for free speech? It's an oxymoron. Therefore, if your business model is to be the home of free speech, then either campaign to have Ofcom removed or do it online. Surely, because if you can't, Ofcom have proven that free speech is not celebrated in this country. We look at the whole point of GB News existing in the media landscape was because every single other news channel was saying exactly the same thing. So GB News came on, and the rest of the media have looked at them and said, "We'll get them. Somehow we'll get them. Someone will do it." And if it hadn't been me that trod on the mine, it would have been someone else who trod on the mine at some point. And that's what would have happened. But what scares me is the fact that everyone wants them shut down. That's what scares me. Now, I think that they should have been a bit ballsier about the whole thing, if I'm honest. I think what they should have done is, instead of utterly completely condemn me, they should have turned around, they've possibly phoned me and said, listen, you blah, 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 blah. What on earth was going on, and let me at least explain, as I've explained here, what's going on, and then take a pause to work out what is their position on this.
Have you spoken to anybody then?
No one's called me at all. I was on my phone. And I when you get those news things appear, and it wrote like Laurence Fox suspended from GB News, and I actually laughed because I thought that's so funny that no one would even send you a message or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, look, to be fair to GB News, they are, I mean, it's a tough situation to be.
It is.
It is a tough situation because, for context, for people watching from overseas, they've got an advertising boycott against them. So they're hemorrhaging money. They've got people pressuring them. They've got people criticising them. They've got the entire media ecology against them. And all of a sudden,
broadcast ecology.
Broadcast ecology, that's the one.
Got it
right. So, in a way, it is understandable, Laurence.
Yes, no, I'm not going. It's all their fault.
Yeah,
it's all my fault. I think we've gone through the.
Of course.
I think we've gone through the struggle session of it's all my fault.
No, I hope it hasn't been a struggle session.
No, because I think. Look, To me in my brain, I just find the whole idea of Ofcom stunningly ridiculous.
Well, this is what I'm saying to you is you're blaming GB News
When
for
I should
being
be blaming
regulated.
Ofcom.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what you're fighting against here. And by the way, just so that it doesn't feel too much like a struggle session, particularly on the broadcast ecology point, there's actually a few videos that I want to play for people to get a little bit of context about what can happen on other channels and what people do on other channels, and no one demands those channels are shut down. So we have a clip of the man we just saw, Adam Bolton. This is how he used to speak to staff when he was on Sky News. By the way, he still works for Rupert Murdoch, so he's having a go at GB News. I wonder if that's a complete accident. Anyway, let's play this clip.
Yeah. If Beth comes, put her in there. And then she can go away. I know. Just put the fucking seat in. Have you got the grab? Yeah. Yeah, well, she's got to come and fucking sit here if she wants to be on telly.
So has the great BJ been speaking yet? No.
Well, in the past few minutes, Mr. Johnson arrived. What the fuck? Sit down there! Stop fucking around! Come on. Yes. Well, Beth is here. You can see Boris Johnson's speech when it happens around lunchtime, but Beth's here.
Great respecter of women, that guy.
Yeah, but I actually defend him.
You
because, do? Yeah, he wasn't on air. And God forbid what GB News have got stored in the cupboard of things I've said when we're not on air.
I can see why you're defending him.
No, but I don't care because I'm saying he wasn't on air.
Yeah.
I'm much more interested in the woman this morning who turned around yesterday on Times Radio in the middle of the day and went, Laurence Fox is a dick. Because I wonder, is that the same level of...
Well, right, and actually, perhaps more to your point, we have a clip from Sky News talking about the Martin Bashir affair, who, of course, tricked Princess Diana. We don't even need to play it, because I think we can retell the story. He tricked, using fraudulent documents, Princess Diana into giving an interview while working at the BBC. Russell Brand, Saxgate happened while he was working at the BBC. I mean, we could go further into the history of BBC presenters' behaviour on and off screen without making this too noncy. So all of that was wrong. I think all the people were reprimanded, of the ones that were available to be reprimanded at the time. But nobody called for the BBC to be shut down. No. Philip Schofield's behaviour didn't result in ITV being shut down or anyone calling for it to be shut down. So
I think we might have done, mate.
Yeah, no one was paying attention to us.
Likely.
They are now. So my point is, where I do agree with you is there is clearly a politically motivated campaign to shut down GB News by, let's be honest, their rivals.
Yeah, and but also the establishment.
Yeah,
the establishment narrative. So this media ecosystem, or whatever, I've forgotten it now. What's it called? Broadcast ecology.
Yeah.
That reaches out, doesn't it? Because it's a massive institution, the BBC, and stuff like that. The broadcast ecology reaches out into the cultural ecology of what is and isn't acceptable and where the Overton window sits within society. GB News, you're right, I should separate out my criticisms. GB News wanted to shift that. To do its best to provide, let's face it, 51% of the population with something to watch that they might learn something from or agree with. And GB News often listens to its audience. It doesn't tell them what to think. It doesn't use that broadcast ecology thing, but it all expands out to fill up our entire culture. So, newspapers will write the word she. I was speaking to a journalist the other day and I was like, why do you go a picture of a big, scraggly, bearded man with a wig on and say, woman arrested and charged with sex offences, she will be sent, like, why do you do that? And they say it's just easier for the sub-editors to do it, because if someone doesn't write she, then you're going to get a complaint from someone else going, but he says it's a woman, and it broadens out and out and out and out and out and infects our culture. And I think I've just rambled myself into a corner. What was I trying to say?
No, you were talking about the broadcast ecology.
Yeah. So the broadcast, separating out Ofcom is right. Why is off-communists, which is what they are, essentially, anything with com on the end of it, it just stands for communism. LCOM, we get LCOM, the Reclaim Party, L-communists. We get fined, investigated relentlessly, non-stop, unlike any other political party would, and we're tiny like this. So I think there's a determined effort, not only to shut down GB News, but I think there's a determined effort to shut down anyone who is confident and okay to share an opinion.
The thing that I find really frustrating when it comes to broadcasters like the BBC, so I actually watched that Newsnight. All those people around that table agreed. They all agreed that...
They probably broke Ofcom rules.
They
absolutely broke Ofcom rules, because there was not one single person there who offered a dissenting voice. GB News has Aaron Bastani come on, who we've had on the show. Love Aaron. Aaron is so far to the left you can't see him, right? Okay, he's the head of Novara Media.
Is he as far to the left as the Conservative Party?
It's a good point and a good joke. So you are not even adhering to your own rules, where you talk about the fact that GB News is biased and doesn't, it only has one point of view. But look at what you do. But yet that's seen as fine. That's what angers me.
Yeah, and I think I think probably the point I was trying to make is it's not really an anger at GB News. It's more like going, guys, do you realise what is about to happen? You're going to have to become Ofcom compliant, which means you have to become part of the ecology, and that means you're just going to be the same as all of the other channels. Their desperate last move to not get removed is to become exactly the same as Sky News or BBC News or ITV News, just with no budget, no advertisers. It's like you just go out there with swords and go, no, Ofcom, we're going to do this, we're going to fight you.
No, but then they are going to get shut down.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Maybe this is why you don't run a TV channel, Laurence.
I don't want to run. I would never want to run a TV channel.
Yeah.
But I just don't think. I think Ofcom. What's the point of Ofcom? It's just narrative gatekeeping.
Look, I've become more and more sympathetic to that position, where watching what has actually happened. I mean, are you worried for GB News? If you were working for them, would you be worried? I mean, you still are.
Currently, for the next however long, I've got the disciplinary at 2. So
Yeah.
We'll see. I am. Yeah, I am. I don't think. I'm not sure how they can survive. They, again, this thing of like saying we're the home of free speech, but we've had to cancel a load of people. That's not a good look for a TV channel, because it's their USP. I think that's a problem for them. I think that they'll have to dumb themselves down so dramatically that they'll become indistinguishable from any other news channel. And I think their presenters will all be have all their authenticity taken away from them, that they'll just have to sort of say this sort of same thing with a very slight right-leaning tendency, but also they've burnt a lot of bridges now with, they just suspended Calvin Robinson for not going on someone's show because he's saying Dan Wootton hasn't been sacked yet, or may not be sacked at all. So until that investigation is complete, I'm not going to go on someone else's show, because I would feel that would personally compromise my loyalty to him as a person. It's the guilty until proven innocent thing, which is which is a much bigger problem in society, as we know.
Not to make this more of a struggle session, but do you feel responsible for what's happening to GB News now? Are you quite happy that you've sort of highlighted this issue? How do you feel about it?
No, I don't. I'm pissed off with myself for that. I don't have any malevolence towards GB News. I really enjoyed going on and pursuing the stories that I managed to get out, and certainly with the, just recently with the Sadiska Thurmalesh's family and all of that sort of stuff. I thought, this is great. This is a channel that's talking about this. Look, I think that they've jumped too much. Am I responsible? I am, in a way, because look, where's it come from? But am I responsible for saying what I said? No, I'm responsible because they took me. I'm the bait. I said the stupid thing, and the entire social media and media descended on me.
But no, Laurence, but I come back to this point, which I think is important for this discussion, not to try and make you look better or anything, but they had to sack you.
I know, I get that. I'm not saying that.
Okay,
you're missing my point.
I'm misunderstanding.
I've said that several times.
Yeah.
They came for me, all of them, and
Yeah.
as you quite rightly pointed out, this is rank hypocrisy
Yes.
from the media ecology. They came for me, and they came en masse. So yes, I am responsible.
But what should GB News do when that happens? You said something unacceptable that breaks the rules, both theirs and Ofcom's. All these people come for you, as you say.
Yeah.
I agree with you, massive overreaction,
Yeah.
even though your comments were wrong, in my opinion. But what should GB News do in that situation?
I don't know. I think they probably don't have much option. I don't know why they suspended Dan.
Nor do I, actually.
But I think, Dan's had some problems there with people trying to take him down. I don't know why they've suspended Calvin this morning. I don't know why. It's like, I think there's there must be somewhere in a big room somewhere they're going like, we're losing £30 million a year. We need to get some advertisers. We're going to need to dumb this whole thing down, make it very, advertising.
Mainstream and
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah, which is fine. Also do it, but don't hire me.
I mean, that's good advice.
It's like they know what I'm like. They know what I've done, what I've said, and how open I am with what I speak. They hired me. I take full responsibility for what I said, and I fully support their right to fire me. I'm not trying to. Also, I'm really not interested in protecting my job for the reasons I've already laid out about the atmosphere in the place anyway. But they did hire me, and they did know that you're hiring someone who's on the edge, and as Angelos himself said, sails pretty close to the wind on what is free speech. Now, if free speech is your passion and your interest, and you see it as the only way out of a problem that we've got in culture, then you are going to step on landmines when you do it in the way that I do it. I'm constantly looking for what the edge of acceptability is, and I've trodden over it, and so be it. Bye. I'm not sitting here going, it's so unfair. I'm not like that. It's not. I own my mistakes.
Laurence, do you think as well, I think it's very interesting, if you cast your mind back to literally a week, these broadcasters, particularly Channel 4 and BBC, were under heavy fire because of the Russell Brand allegations. Heavy fire, and a lot of very difficult and important questions were being asked about the way that these broadcasters conducted themselves, and also how their presenters conducted themselves, and whether people were being put in danger around these presenters. All of a sudden, this blows up. They then come after GB News. And look, maybe it's me being heavily conspiratorial. I'm here going, is this just a massive deflectionary tactic?
Yeah, of course it is. And also, as someone quite rightly pointed out, the only time I've laughed since Monday was someone said, hang on a minute, everyone's being in such a fuss for someone shagging too many people, and you're getting cancelled for not wanting to shag someone. That's what they're cancelling you for. The knives have been out for GB News from day one. Even from within the organisation, man. There's loads of people in there who hate that channel and want to take it down.
Why are they working there?
Because people need money. And you're trained out of technical college, or you're trained by the BBC or whatever, and you don't get a job and you move and get GB News and whatever.
Laurence, you know what worries me about this whole situation is, irrespective of how crass and offensive your comments were, whatever, we've got to a point where I think a very significant portion of our chattering classes care more about people's words than about their actions. And that I don't get that.
It's easier to care about someone's words if someone says the right thing. It's like like critical race theory. It's so much harder to solve actual inequalities in society than just by saying, well, if you're black, you're oppressed. rather than going, well, no, actually, if you're poor and you can't afford to feed your own family, you're oppressed by a system which needs to be reformed. The difficulty is, we celebrate false virtue. That's one of the most important aspects of the modern progressive world that we live in, and we don't look at people's actions. I'm actually I'm proud of a lot of what I've done, and I'm proud of a lot of the relationships that I have with people who profoundly disagree with me, and I've built bridges where bridges cannot be built. I suppose the worrying part now is I'm going to have to leave the UK, I think. That's my main concern, is like, I'm cancelled from my own country. Or
why do you have to leave the UK?
Well, I've got to earn a living. I've got 2 kids to put through school and to feed, So that's, I think, what will have to happen. I mean, do you think I should? I mean, I'm really happy to nip over to Talk TV and knock on the door and go, hey guys, anyone hiring?
I mean, they need the views, Loz.
They do, to be fair, mate.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's really that bad, or is this gonna?
I've been cancelled twice, man. I've had my acting career taken away from me for saying something totally nothing wrong. So yes, I've gone over there. We've done that bit. But I had my acting career removed for saying that England is a tolerant, warm, welcoming nation. So I've been cancelled once. And I had to drag myself up with, actually, you helped me put together a Patreon and all that sort of stuff. You said, this is how you do it. Drag myself back up out of that one, and finally got back to a position, and then I'm cancelled again. So I know how hard it is to pick yourself up from these situations. So, I don't know if I've got the energy for it, if I'm honest. Maybe I'll be on the male suicide list, you never know.
I mean, look, but as well, Laurence, you're very charismatic, you're a great presenter, you're incredibly likeable, you've got a huge audience, you've got a lot of people who love what you do. You're very employable.
Thanks, Mum.
It's true. I'm not saying, none of these things that I'm saying are wrong or incorrect. There's a lot of people who would look at you and think to themselves, I
would shank him.
Yes, exactly. You can tell he went to boarding school, mate.
I'm taken, mate. I'm afraid.
It depends how much you want the gig, Laurence.
Yeah. Exactly. The casting couch. Bring it back. I'll be queuing all.
Well, look, man, I will say this, and I don't like the joke you made about being on the male suicide list, because I think
I wasn't joking.
I know you weren't, and this is why I don't like it, because I don't like that I'll say it again, so this can't be clipped out of context. I didn't agree with what you said. I didn't like what you said. But I don't like living in a society where making a crass comment puts you in this position.
No, we shouldn't.
That's not right.
No, it's
That's not right.
Well, when I was talking about it, like when I went through it last time, those thoughts did go through my head. So you're like, what's next? What's coming next? And totally accept my own stupid fault as well. But we shouldn't live in a society
this isn't right.
that does that to people. And we also... we're talking principles rather than regulators. We should not live in a society where your only chance of survival and existence is to kowtow and bow to the whims of a cancel mob that will want to eat you regardless of what you've got to say if it doesn't agree with whatever the mob's mood is that day. That is a terrifying place for a society to be.
And I will say this as well. I think with Ava, who made the comments about male suicide, which I think were, grotesque and unacceptable, she's probably got a lot of shit. And that really shouldn't be happening either. Both you and her should be in a position where you express opinions that lots of other people don't like. But this idea that we just gang up on people and we just spout shit at them until they want to go and kill
I don't gang up on anybody.
I'm not saying you.
No, I'm just saying this is why I hate that side of the argument. And I hate the ideology that she represents, because it's disgustingly vile, divisive and hateful, and it supports the cancellation of people. The number of people that come onto my feed and go, you're fucked, mate, you're dead, it's over. It's like, I would never do that to someone.
You wouldn't, but I imagine she's had a lot of people do that to her.
Well, and she's been talked about how much it is. So I don't bother wasting my time pretty much going through the replies to my feed, because a lot of them are like, I hope your kids die, I hope you'll die, watch your back, you'll get started. I don't bother to go for the victim thing, because I don't believe in victims. I believe in courageous people. I admire courage. And therefore, it is pretty bad. So it's a complex situation. We can agree that what I said was wrong, we can then think about what should the consequences of that be. Now, I'm totally happy to go, right, you're right, I went past your editorial code, goodbye, leave. But that means, for the second time, that where am I going to get a job in the UK? What am I going to do? You know? And that is when you're a father, and most of the stuff I do anyway, the reason I spoke out in the first place, which was on TRIGGERnometry, ironically, in 2019, was to say this world is in a really bad place, and I've got children, and I don't want them to grow up. I need to do some of the fighting, so I don't leave them to have to do the fighting. I had a half-an-hour conversation with one of my son's PSHE coordinators who was saying, he said, we don't teach extreme ideologies. And I said, like what? Like trans and stuff, because that's an extreme ideology, isn't it? And she went, oh no, we teach that. And I said, white privilege, do you teach that? And they're like, yep. Pronouns, yep. Social transitioning. So I'm like, those are all extreme ideologies. I'm fighting my arse off to make sure that my kid can leave school not totally part of the media ecology or the cultural ecology, you know? Well, the most important thing in this world is that people are themselves, and we are living in a culture that is making people, being yourself, contingent on the fact that you don't have a job, you don't have a livelihood, and it's game over should you fuck up even once.
But Laurence, look, I will
Francis,
say...
sorry, before you do that, I'll just say I want our audience to get a chance to ask a few questions and
Sure.
chip in here. So send in your questions now. We're going to go to a quick break shortly after Francis asked a few questions, and we'll be answering your questions and putting them to Laurence as well.
Look, I think it's very important at this point for everybody who's watching and listening, who is in a situation where they feel that they are without hope, and this is extended to you, that there is always hope, Laurence.
I know.
When things seem at their most bleak, it's sometimes the moment, or frequently the moment, where things can turn around.
You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. Yeah, I know it very good. It's just, you know, if you've had 48 hours of every single pop-up on your phone, every single media channel, everything aimed at you.
Yes.
And how evil you are, it makes you very, very raw.
Yeah, so look, let's also talk about this as well, because this is an important part of the discussion. We've done the rest of it. What is it like being in the centre of this media storm right now?
Well, you can't eat. You thrive on cortisol, so it's like being, you can see me, I'm itching. It's very itchy. You feel hopeless. It's very painful. And you feel, you know, you can't feel sorry for yourself because your own fucking thing, you've done it. So it's not that. And you just feel, I get upset about, a little bit upset about the hypocrisy of it all, I suppose, but I'm just not surprised. You know, that's the nature of these things. It's horrible. Who would want to live in it? You know, it makes you want to buy a small log cabin in a fjord somewhere in Norway and write a long James Joyce-esque type book for the next 15 years and wait for Britain to rot, you know, and then see what happens.
And what effect has it had on the people around you and your kids?
My poor kids are amazing, but they know who I am. They know what version of, they know who I am. So they're not going to believe stuff that they say in the media. My sons are amazing. You know, people outside of that situation will use it to weaponize. There's a very famous actor went up to my son at school and told him his dad was a fascist. You know, which I think is about as repellent behaviour as possible. But yeah, no, my family, it affects my family. It affects everybody. You know, that's what it does. It's, but I, you know, yet again, regardless of this current issue, there has been a target on my back for 4 years.
Yeah.
And that target is not going anywhere. It's getting sharper, harder. People are zooming in on it. And, you know, thank God I'm not a sort of rapey person, because they can't, you know, I was like, when do the sexual abuse allegations come in? Next, do they? You know, this lack of truth. If you're not watching a process take place honestly, like the Russell Brand thing was not honest the way they went about that. And I don't even like Russell Brand. I find him an irritating man, if I'm really honest. But you could see levers were pulled, machines were set in motion, and all of it.
What do you mean?
Well, where were the police? If you've got a problem and you've been sexually abused and raped...
Lawrence, it's not that simple, mate.
No, but
it's not that simple.
I'm not making it simple. I'm turning around and saying, before someone has been formally charged with sexual assault...
Oh, he's innocent until proven guilty.
You do not have the culture minister, or whatever a stupid name
writing she was head of a committee,
writing to people, trying to have
completely unacceptable.
That is communism.
Well,
you know,
it's a member of the committee, the chair of the committee.
She's an MP for Gosport.
Yeah.
Do you think
she was completely unacceptable?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It demeans the problem that they're trying to solve, which is the underreporting and underconviction of female sexual assault.
Yeah.
So anyone who's got even the vaguest level of sceptical thought over a government which has lied to us relentlessly, you're feeding us.
So your point is that happening sort of like it creates more doubt in people's minds about the credibility of the allegations.
Exactly.
Which I agree with you entirely on, and I think it's slightly different to the point about go to the police, because it is more complicated than that. We've spoken to people who've been victims of sexual assault, and a lot of them will say, you know, it's my word against his, he's much more powerful, all of that stuff, and I understand that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
I really do. But I think, you know, Francis and I would both agree with you, and we said it at the time that, you know, these rumors about Russell Brand have been going around in our industry for over a decade. So
do you think, and Russell Brand is the tip of the iceberg? I worked in show business for 25 years, and as I've said before, the number of national treasures I could bury is beyond stuff, you know, and that's not for things like sexual assault.
And it's the same with Russell Brand and comedy. There's a lot of other people that should have been in the article, but weren't, and I'm curious to find out why that is.
Well, it's like we've got a problem in the UK. We've got a major problem, and I don't think people quite. We've talked about it before, but it's got steadily worse to the point where, you know, there's a legitimate reason for sanctioning me. But I think the level of it will make some people think, what is, as you said, is there an ulterior motive? Was there like, we can distract from the BBC Russell Brand stuff and we'll just jump on GB News, get Laurence done, because that's what we do, because he's a blabbermouth and he says the wrong thing frequently. And it applies scepticism. And if this girl, Ava, is talking about, sexual assault and all of that sort of stuff, weaponising words like, I want men to be terrified and all that diminishes away from the goal of what we all as a society. You must have girlfriends and I have girlfriends.
I don't have girlfriends, I'm just married.
I know, but friends that are girls
that's
who
what
have experienced at the very least unwanted sexual advances and at the very worst much more. So we have to have a conversation as a society. How do we deal with that problem? One of the ways of having that conversation is to have a free and open conversation about it, you know. And I don't think that the way the media have handled Russell Brand, and I don't think the word she used on that show, which, you know, I know it's harder to get, but she does use the word frightened, terrified. I don't think that's going to.
This is a Talk TV discussion from last year with Connor Tomlinson.
I don't think that's going to make, you know, and I know a lot of men. One of the other things that is not talked about, whereas men maybe use sexual violence, women will use psychological violence against men. They will abduct children. They will completely remove children from the father's life, and fathers again will commit suicide as a result of it, which Jeff Norcott wanted to talk about in a balanced, fair way. But no, the media ecology or the broadcasting ecology, you're not allowed to talk about that. We've got to talk about how bad it is for girls.
All right, Laurence, we've done an hour's interview, and I really want our audience to have their say. I have no idea what they think of what you're saying, of what we're saying, and I actually think it's really important to get them involved. So we're going to take a break for a couple of minutes, get you another cup of water or whatever.
Lovely.
And we'll be back in a couple of minutes with your questions. Keep the super chats coming in. We've got some PayPals as well. We're going to be reading out some of the best ones. We'll do about half an hour when we come back. See you in a couple of minutes.
I need to take a waz.
I only applied to Cambridge, got into Cambridge, And I thought that was going to be the beginning of my full agency. It was actually the beginning of the end. I suddenly was exposed to sort of a culture of critical theories which told me that I was a victim and that I was at an inherent disadvantage. And that really messed with my mind. I got very depressed, was on antidepressants, was suicidal for my second year. Throughout my life, it was white people who cared for me. It was white people who loved me. I'd been abandoned by my black mother. So there was an inherent contradiction in what I was being told.
You're a young woman who is at Cambridge University. You get a degree from there, your opportunities are limitless. And yet you're a victim with, it's just bollocks.
This kind of pessimistic narrative, which we've mostly imported from America, is simply inconsistent with reality. I think it's indicative of a wider problem. At the moment, in terms of culture, America is the metropole and the UK is basically a colony.
There's this phrase that again we borrow from America, which is, this is a country built, a nation of immigrants. I've read British history. Yeah. It's not a nation of immigrants.
It's not.
Why do we do that?
I think the reason why we do that is because we sort of don't want to concede any point to the sort of anti-immigrant, conservative or far right, whatever you want to call them. But I think the best way to do that is to do it on the basis of truth.
Yeah.
Rather than on the basis of any sort of myth-making. If you tell people enough times that they are the victims of racism, they are the victims of oppression, they are the victims of discrimination, they will inevitably see it everywhere.
Hello and welcome back to our exclusive live interview with Laurence Fox. This is the segment where you get to ask your questions to Laurence. So make sure to send through a PayPal or a super chat and we'll put your questions to Laurence himself.
Before we go into the questions, I will say you were very on brand right as we finished the interview. Before we cut off, you went, I need a Waz, and stood up, and that is the last thing that people saw.
No, sorry.
That's absolutely fine.
I'm so sorry.
That is absolutely fine.
Right, it's
Don't
great.
fire me. I don't want to breach your editorial code.
And plus, that is the sort of stuff that we do here anyway.
Yeah.
Soar on High Like Eagle, sending a super chat, says, how do you maintain the stability of your sons during this turbulent time? Are there many mates supporting you personally too? Do attacks like this give you more courage to fight on?
Very good question. My children are, your kids, as you know, as any father knows, they are a lot of your reason for living. Mm-hmm. So I do what I always do, which is I make a family dinner every night when they get back from school. And, they have breakfast by themselves because they're grumpy little bastards. But when they get back from school, I make them a homemade meal every night and we sit down and we talk through issues. And, what you've got to do when you're going through something like this is give out to your children. So don't go into yourself when I've had these before, my little ones come up and said, are you all right, Dad? And you don't really want that from your kids. So you want to, I'm like, how was your day? And you distract out of it. I'm very blessed with an amazing woman who is really supporting me, which has been great, and some really good friends, It's, I mean, it's great. The situations like these are great friend-culling moments. So we get to go around and cull again. But I've had, my life is hugely blessed, really. So I've got my health and I've got my kids and I've got love. So that's all that matters, really.
Absolutely. Richard E asks, Laurence, what are your plans for the future?
I don't know, man. I'm not sure. I'm doing a lot of the law, our legal stuff. We're going to take the Department of Education to court to stop the government are starting to come round onto our ideas, but we've got a lot of families of kids who've been socially transitioned, then moved on to the full transitioning and been regretted the full stuff. And we want the Department of Education to lay out some very clear guidance, or just even possibly uphold the existing one and stop the teachers, activists that were formerly known as teachers, indoctrinating our children with this same mind rubbish that's filling up the rest of the society.
MEBL says, not a question, just to say that most women fully support men's health, especially mental health, being given due attention, which I think is objectively just true.
Yeah.
And she says, I appreciated Laurence's apology. It felt sincere and thoughtful. What a shit show this all is.
Yeah, I think that's the truth. It is a shit show, and that's very, very sad. And I do feel, I do feel really sad that I've put GB News in this position where they're now sort of desperately cancelling everybody. Angelos certainly has never been anything other than a gentleman, really charming to me. So it is a reciprocal relationship, and I have let them down in that way, which is why I apologised yesterday, because I wasn't apologising because I'm not trying to say, please can I have my job. I'm not at all. I'm apologising because I have my own conscience, which leads on to this idea, which we touched on last time, which is if you've got two sides of an ever increasing tribalism, which won't speak to each other, you're going to have a fight at some point. And this is the skirmishes that's going on at the moment. We'll cancel them, get rid of them. But it will become physical one day. So part of being a Christian is also to forgive. And you can't forgive unless you ask for repentance, And so that was what the point of my video was to say genuinely to her, so she understood that it was totally genuine, that I apologised for the way I spoke to her, whilst not apologising for the sentiment behind what I spoke. And I believe that the world, if we lived in a more forgiving world, then where forgiveness was upheld as a real value, was sexy, was cool, rather than cancelling it, which is cool.
Well, this is why we wanted to have you on and have this discussion, actually. And in terms of the tribes fighting, it's what we are trying to do here, which is what we've always tried to do. And that's why, we had Aaron Bastani on recently and Mark Steele, and I did a debate on the Moral Maze with Ash Sarkar. She will come on when she's got a book out. We want to bring people together and have really good, healthy conversations. And do them like this, where you get to see the whole person. You said some things that people will disagree with and I disagree with, but you're also a great guy. And when I've been around your kids, you're a great dad, and you are, like all of us, a rounded human being who's fallible, who makes mistakes, lives on the edge, as you say, and sometimes you do go too far. And you and I have had our private disagreements and whatever, but I think it's really important to humanize each other in that way. I really do.
I agree with you. I think we, if we lose humanity if we don't.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not really getting a lot of messages through. I've only had 2 through, but I will. So this is one message that I've got through that is not a question. Well, it kind of is actually. It's from Richard E. Laurence Fox is a freedom fighter for free speech. Hopefully, he will start his own platform. ?
Yeah, well, I'll have to do something, because literally I've got to feed children, and this is that when you, as a man, again going back to the idea of man and women, I'm sure as well. But the first thing a man thinks is like, how am I going to feed my kids?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's what women think as well.
I did say.
I know. I was just joking.
But if you're in a marriage or something like that, then sometimes it's not the end of the world. But if you're doing what I do, which is I'm pretty busy all the time, I have a lot of structural support around my life to make sure that I can provide my kids with the time that they need, and and everything that they need to do, because that they are the most important thing. So yeah, I think it probably will. I don't know. I'll have to work out what to do.
Yep.
I mean, got a few million people watch my thing yesterday.
Including Elon Musk?
Including Elon Musk, apparently, yeah.
Matt Shaw says, Sadiq Khan spends millions of public money on his May campaign. What's he got to say about suicide, #1 cause of death among men under 50? Nothing, doesn't care, nobody does.
Well, if we convince Sadiq Khan that suicide in men under 50 was caused by climate change, I'm sure he'd be really involved. But again, you know, if you think about it, are men is the feminization of men helping them?
No,
it's not.
It's not.
No.
Men need to go. Like, I'm lucky because I was raised to be expressive. I mean, unlucky in certain situations as well. But I do tell people how I feel. So if I felt really desperate, I think I would tell someone. But I've got so many people I know who just wouldn't, and you get the call, and it's just heartbreaking. And you go, you're a friend, and you're like, why didn't I see it? Why couldn't I spotted it? Why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I say to someone that they knew that I was worried? Or, you know, because and I don't think any of this is going to help cucking men. Sorry.
No, I don't think it will. I also don't think men talking about their feelings is necessarily the answer to all of this. I think for men, the answer is doing things you love, solving whatever problems are causing you to be unhappy, whether that is through, you know, therapy or whatever, but it shouldn't be like, oh, I feel bad, oh, really, we're so sorry for you. It should actually help you overcome the issues that you're dealing with. Exercise, you know, like I worked out in my late 20s how to give myself depression in a week flat.
How?
Just talking to me, mate.
Talking to Francis, just hang around with him.
Just talk to me, mate.
No, but he'll do that in less than a week. But don't get enough sleep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Drink alcohol or take drugs. Stay indoors. Don't exercise. Don't talk to anyone. Don't speak to family and friends and whatever. You do that for a week. I don't care how great your brain is. You're going to feel pretty depressed. So I worked out how to feel better. Like the weather turned like a week ago, and I was instantly like, whoa, I can feel. So I was like, okay, well, I need to up my exercise. I need to call my family. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to spend more time with my son and wife. All of that. That really is the answer, I think, for men. Instead of like, oh, let's sit down and talk. Men don't want to talk about our feelings. No. It's just not how we're built. We're not wired that way.
But you're right. But I think we're talking slightly different things, which is it's the permission to.
Yeah.
It's the permit. You're exactly right. I've had this neck operation. I haven't been able to exercise for 8 months. It's completely messed with my happiness.
Yeah.
I was running in and out of the office every day. I was, you know, I was feeling good. I gave up smoking, and then I met a doctor who said to me, "Why are you vaping? That's even worse than smoking. Get smoking or give up everything."
Yeah.
And it's had a real profound effect. I'm very much a doer person. You know, I do, and I get out and I do things, and I'm busy. And I think that's right. You can't just sit and listen to people moan. But I think if a man or a woman, I don't think it really should be about sex. If someone is feeling desperate and sad, they tend to go quiet. They tend not to go noisy.
Yeah.
And that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan says, don't remember anyone suggesting the BBC getting axed when Brand and Ross made their shagged your granddaughter comments.
Well, but also at the end of the day, that was very distasteful, but it was sort of an attempt at humour.
Yeah.
In the same way as I wouldn't shag that was an attempt at humour.
Yeah.
So we've also got to remember that the first thing, the sunlight to the woke vampire is laughter.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're going to, I wrote it, my song, first of all was laughter.
Yeah.
Just to quell the unoffended.
It was a beautiful song, by the way.
Yeah.
Sean T says, and, you know, we've talked about GB News quite a bit, and this is a provocative question, but he says, serious question following this, what is now the point of GB News?
Very good question. I don't know, because it's perception, isn't it? Ultimately, the USP of GB News is free speech. That's it. Home of free speech. That's what they said. We're the home of free speech. Now, whether they still maintain to be the home of free speech as regulated by Ofcom, you're not really the home of free speech if you're the home of free speech as regulated by Ofcom. I don't know why GB News ever wanted to be regulated anyway. They have explained it to me several times, but I'm like, well...
I imagine you can't broadcast on TV.
Yeah, but they should have just gone online. It should just be an online channel, which I think they're going to do. I don't know what the future of GB News is. I think the way that they've behaved, certainly over Dan and Calvin, is... it's not Dan's fault if you found something I say funny, is it?
Yeah, and he did actually say, just to provide balance. I mean, look, he probably should have pushed back a lot stronger.
Well, he was laughing. That was the point.
But people make mistakes too.
Yeah.
But that's it. Everyone makes mistakes. But the problem is, if you make mistakes on GB News, it's game over.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think sacking you is what they have to do. I don't understand why they would sack Dan, and I haven't had a chance to look into the Cowan situation properly.
Yeah.
No, they'll, we'll see what happens.
Esther says you can be forthright, Laurence, without being coarse, i.e. Douglas Murray.
Yes, you can. You can, absolutely. But fortunately, my name is Laurence, and my surname is Fox, not Douglas, my surname Murray.
Ralph89 says, would there be any possibility of Laurence joining one of the existing alternative media networks?
Which are what? What are they?
Like Lotus Eaters, etc.
I'm sure I'll speak
Daily
to them.
Wire.
I'll probably just start one up. I'll just turn around and go, just go around, turn around and say, let's use the money that we use for this, for that. We'll see. I've always said from the day I started off doing the Reclaim Party, I said I don't think the political party is the right answer because I don't think there's a political solution to a cultural problem. Therefore, you need a cultural solution to the problem, which is to make even if it's as stupid as saying being a mum is cool, make being a mum cool again.
Yeah.
Instead of teaching all of these poor little girls and young women who are coming out of school that the only way that they can ever be truly respected in life is by not having children and having more money than men. It's like, well, really? You're going to really regret that decision at 38 when your fertility falls off the cliff.
I mean, it's very true.
It's very true. Moma says, apart from anything, were some GB News presenters naive to think it would be a paragon of free speech when they played in MSM territory, mainstream media territory, and put themselves under Ofcom? Not that GB News can't be a better MSM.
I think I'm very guilty of they sent me their broadcasters charter and all that sort of stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, I get it. Say what you think, and then if someone don't let someone, allow someone to disagree. That was my essential view of it. So, again, I think I'm guilty of podcastitis, where you just, Ofcom is just sort of some bunch of censorship drones who I don't want to ever speak to, or I don't think about when I'm at work. Other people do that for me, or not.
I've got another one.
Yep, go for
Marco says, Mr. Fox, mistakes have been made. You've owned up to them, and well done. You do have great points in general and do good work. Lead by example, and I wish you luck. Thanks, Trig Gang, for the chance to chip in.
Cheers,
great.
Marco.
So, and Matt Shaw says, Adam Bolton is a fool whose career should have been ended when he appeared drunk on TV with Alistair Campbell and lost his rag. And Campbell, of all people, told him, dignity, dignity. An utter gargoyle. Well, that's Matt Shaw's opinion.
Yeah, there you go.
I haven't seen the Adam Bolton drunk on TV. I've seen a couple.
Allegedly.
Allegedly drunk on TV. I've seen a couple of really funny drunk on TVs, but my favourite drunk one is drunk referees in football. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, just type in drunk referees in football. Best YouTube video you'll ever see in your life.
There you go.
Mycroft says, just sending love to Laurence, nothing else. So that's good.
Thank you.
And Jason says, do you think the latest form of feminism basically advocates a structural change to make men subservient and subjugated to women?
Yeah, it's authoritarian feminism, absolutely, 100%. And it's so bad for both sexes. Because, there's a reason why all of these, I'm trying to think about some of the stuff I used to be taught at school, and this stuff would be child abuse nowadays. You need good, strong men to lead and families, and anyone who said that nowadays is an alt-right, fascist, anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist.
It's why things like rugby and contact sports are actually so important, particularly for boys, so that when you do get a punch in the head, you get a shoulder in the ribs, you realise it's not the end of the world. It's just a bit of pain, and you'll be able to run it off.
I know, but my little one goes to one of those, you get free medals for coming last. And I was told at one football match that I wasn't allowed to clap if they scored. And then they indoctrinate the children with it. So then he comes home and he's like, it doesn't matter about winning, Dad. It's just about playing the game. And I'm like, okay, do you want a game of FIFA? He's like, yeah. And I just, usually I let him win. And I just started beating him, and he just got more and more and more and more angry. And I said, that feeling? Hold on to that. because that's competitiveness.
And then did you score another goal after that?
If you're going to destroy a child's confidence, you must do it totally and utterly.
Yeah, absolutely.
7-0 Mansfield Town versus Man United.
Julia says, Laurence, set up your own YouTube channel. We need to hear your voice. We need to hear your opinions too. I'm a psychiatric nurse and you're bang on about male suicide. Thank you for trying to help. Julia.
Yeah, in my inbox, if you could read the inbox of my Twitter feed of messages from women whose husbands or partners or children have killed themselves, that's why I got so upset again at the beginning, because I've been reading them all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jamie says, will this damage their acclaim party?
I don't know. Damage. I don't know.
I think it's hard to argue that this won't, but not that I take any pleasure in that, of course, but yeah. I think that's it. Laurence, thank you for coming back. Listen, we should say this, right, before we leave, which is you're going through a rough time. We may not always agree with you, but you're a friend, and please always call us when you're going through difficult stuff. Mm-hmm. Whatever is going on, you should remember there's a lot of people who like you and love you and support you, even when you make mistakes, as you did in this case, and all of that aside. So please look after yourself, look after your family, and all the best to you. And I said this is equally true of anybody else, including Ava. We wish everybody the best, even if they're wrong, even if they say things that are wrong, even if they're on the other side of politics or whatever. We need more healthy discussion and we need more healthy conversation. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming on and talking to us. I hope this has been productive for everybody, and you and us and everybody included. Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I'm just off to destroy someone on Twitter, mate.
Take care, guys. We'll see you later on. Bye.